The Novation Launchpad is an extremely versatile MIDI controller, a perfect tool for aspiring music producers and creative individuals. And while, from an outsider's perspective, it may seem complex and potentially mysterious, it is relatively easy to pick up and extremely fun once you understand how it works. So, here is everything you need to know about the Launchpad. My inspirations. My name is Inspirasper. The Launchpad was first made in 2009 by a company called Novation, and as of the recording of this video, there are 4 different models of the Launchpad you can get your hands on. The Launchpad Mini, Launchpad S, Launchpad Mark II, and the Launchpad Pro, each with slightly different layouts and unique abilities. However, each functions in roughly the same way. At its core, the Launchpad is a MIDI controller, which stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. This is a fancy way of saying the Launchpad can communicate with music production software to both give and receive signals, which in turn can play certain notes or perform certain functions. An electric keyboard, for example, is also a MIDI controller, where pressing a certain key on your hardware is mapped to a particular signal that the software on your computer recognizes as a note. And the Launchpad functions very similarly, though the first difference you'll notice is there aren't any notes, at least not in the traditional sense that you'd think. So in order to use a Launchpad, you will need a digital audio workstation, or DAW for short, to communicate with your MIDI controller. You can't just expect to plug in your Launchpad to any USB port and expect it to play music just because it has power. It wouldn't know what to do. Imagine you bought a car, but just the exterior of the car. No engine, just the frame. It looks cool, but it doesn't do anything. In this case, your car is your Launchpad and your DAW is the engine. What's going on under the hood is the important part, doing all the work. If you don't know what a DAW is, no need to worry. Purchasing a Launchpad through Novation's site will include a copy of Ableton Lite, a digital audio workstation originally intended to be used with the Launchpad. The Launchpad can work with other DAWs, for example, FL Studio or Logic Pro, but Novation has been partnered with Ableton since the creation of the Launchpad back in 2009, so the MIDI controller is optimized to work with this software. Once you get your Launchpad and have installed Ableton, you can begin using your controller. The next step is to get some feedback from your Launchpad, which is as easy as clicking a few buttons in Ableton. The specific setup varies per model, but can typically be figured out by reading the instruction manuals. So once that's done, your Launchpad can finally be used. Now, the Launchpad is sort of like a Swiss Army knife in that it has many tools that you can use, and it's beneficial to know what they are and what they allow you to do. Session mode. Each Launchpad has a session mode, which allows you to play audio loops in a synchronized manner. This is perfect for live jam sessions or maybe to inspire a melody for a song that you're working on. In this mode, you can drag audio files into Ableton's session view and trigger them on your Launchpad. Here, pressing any button containing an audio file will play that audio file and loop it over and over and over and over and Only one audio file can be playing in any given column, so pressing another button within the same column will stop the current audio file and play the next. But it will trigger only on the beat. This way you never have to worry about your timing, and everything will stay synchronized. Since only one audio file can be playing in any given column at one time, it's a good idea to lay out your audio files so each column is a layer of your song. So for example, one column can contain audio files of drum patterns, and another can play melodies. This is a perfect way to jam out and gain some inspiration with your song. Mixer mode. Each Launchpad also has a mixer mode in some way or the other. What this can do varies based on the model, but generally this can be used to automate certain parameters of your session. So maybe the volume of a given track, or maybe you can pan it left or right. You can manually stop or start clips. Maybe you can record within Ableton to save what you have been making. Maybe you can mute a certain track, or maybe you can solo a particular track. These are all things you can do within Ableton, sure, but if you're at your Launchpad and away from the computer, it's nice to have the ability to automate these parameters manually, just all self-contained within the Launchpad. User mode. Every Launchpad has some form of a user mode, which allows you to play the Launchpad as an instrument similar to a piano. Or you can drag and drop audio samples onto any of the 64 main buttons, where you can then trigger that sample by pressing that button. The key difference here from session mode is that the triggered audio file does not loop unless otherwise specified, and you can also create some cool light effects to be played at the touch of your button. The Launchpad Mini and the Launchpad S each have 4 main colors, being red, orange, yellow, and green, as well as a few in-between combinations, to be used in your light effects. But the Launchpad Pro and the Launchpad Mark II both have full RGB LEDs, so you have a much wider range of colors to use in your light effects. Ultimately, what can be done within user mode is create covers of songs, where a given track can be sliced up and the player can memorize the pattern of the samples. This can be a fun way to create projects that cover your favorite songs or even your own music. The 8x8 grid of squares allows for you to have 64 buttons of samples, but you can also create multiple pages, each containing 64 unique samples in case that wasn't enough. There is even an entire community centered around the Launchpad, where you can download and play other people's projects and covers, or upload your own for other people to play. While I know in this video I didn't extensively cover how to use each of the Launchpad modes, there are great tutorials made by members of the community out there, explaining in depth how to use these tools. I have even made a few tutorials myself, so feel free to check those out if you ever need some help. To summarize, the Launchpad is a MIDI controller focused on assisting music production and live performances. It can be both practical and useful, as well as a fun time killer. Admittedly, it takes a bit of time to get used to, or to learn all of its abilities, but in the end, it is something you won't regret taking the time to learn. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it helped clear up any questions you may have had about the Launchpad. I appreciate you watching. Take care.